How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. Got my
Excellent.
nice fancy shoes on today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, they're spiky too?
Spiky cowboy-esque kind of thing.
Damn.
I got these, what? I want to say 6 years ago. And it was always like, now I have these damn things. Where am I going to wear them? Like, you can't just go to work in these.
Yeah.
It's going
You
to the wall.
could.
It's too much.
You could go to work in them. I feel like that would be a bit of a hazard.
Oh yeah, they slip on anything, and
Yeah.
in a kitchen you need like safe shoes because you're
Yeah.
always gonna fall on the grease or something. Like if a bag falls or
Yeah.
something, like whatever. There's always all kinds of stuff to watch for, right? So you never really get a chance to wear shit like this. And here I'm thinking like, I get these shoes because I thought they looked cool, and then it wasn't until I got them before I realized like, oh, I'll never wear these. Right? And I
Yeah.
think the only time they've ever served a function was when I wore them on my wedding night. Like I was like, I'm gonna wear my crazy shoes because why not, right?
Yeah, hell yeah.
And then today I'm like, you know what? I'm making a podcast. That's as good a reason as any to wear these shoes.
Damn right it is. See, I
So-
used to the only time I could really wear anything kind of cool was when I was playing shows.
Oh yeah.
And it was always you had to have boots.
Yeah.
You had your like shit kicking kind of style boots, and they're great except for the fact that like, if you're stomping around and it's a dusty stage or something like that and you slip, oh man, it sucks.
Yeah, and see, this is my problem. Is like, I want to look nice, but there's almost never an occasion to do so.
Yeah.
Where it's like, or where
Well, nowadays.
you'll go out and you're wearing something nice, and everyone's like, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? You don't need to be wearing that."
I wonder if we can maybe because we watched we've been watching some garbage television.
Of course,
and-
yeah.
as one does.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've noticed with people in Los Angeles, because we're watching a bunch of those kinds of trashy shows, I feel like everybody dresses up more, and I'm assuming because it's nice. Like
Yeah.
you have nice weather, no wind, it's just beautiful. So why not wear whatever the hell you want?
Right. Here
But
we're dressing for function.
Yeah,
Right?
really.
It's either smoldering hot and you
Yeah.
you barely want clothes, let
Yeah.
alone much, or you're freezing to death and you're doing everything you can to bundle up.
Yeah, we're very practical in that sense. Unfortunately, it can't just be fashion based.
And I push back often on a lot of Canadian stereotypes, but we're not living in a great place to do that.
No.
'Cause, like, we actually do get really, really cold.
Yeah,
Because, like, the old...
it's crazy.
There's a lot of people who think Canada's like, it's like you're in Alaska or something, or like the Antarctic.
That's
but-
one where even Alaska scares the shit out of me because our cold is bad enough.
Yeah.
And I would desperately love to get to somewhere where it's not as cold, where I'm not sitting in my car yelling because it's so cold outside. Like I want to get to a warmer place, but Canada, man, it's hard to find.
Yeah. There's a few places, but typically we don't get a lot of spring and autumn here.
No,
Right? Like,
no.
it's just savage cold winters and then really hot summer. Like, this
Yeah.
summer has been...
Super hot.
I just want it to end. And people always scream, don't wish for winter. Like,
Yeah.
we hate winter, right? But I kind of, once I get deep into summer, I'm always like, oh, give me that winter again, right? Because at least you can bundle up.
Yeah, you can always get warmer, I guess.
But I was going to say, we've been talking now, should be episode 10, somewhere in that area. And other than the first episode, I haven't really introduced you. So I've
Oh.
just been talking to...
Cool.
A random dude.
Yeah,
like
I am
random
random
dude
dude.
that knows quite a few things about quite a lot of different things. And it's like I always watch I'll watch random stuff and I don't always have the pretext for the conversation. And
Yeah.
I'm just kinda like, I wonder what this guy's doing. Like what
Yeah.
is this guy?
He's
Right?
some guy.
And so I'm thinking maybe we should finally actually introduce Kevin.
Oh,
And
okay.
what's Kevin?
Cool.
Because I watched the one with Scott and I'm like, oh, look at that. I introduced him right away. And then I was watching our last one that went up just because I always have to watch them after they air, right?
Yeah.
And go, okay, did I make an ass of myself? And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes it's no, right?
It happens.
But I still haven't introduced Kevin, and I keep meaning to, and then we just get carried away, and I'm like,
we get to talking. That's how it works.
and
I
then
don't
it's
know
like, oh, they just did the thing again, right? But You're the shop manager here,
Yes.
but you're also wanting to learn to tattoo too. You're or are learning to tattoo as well.
I am slowly working my way
Right.
there. Yeah, for
So,
sure.
how long have you wanted to do that?
I've loved tattoos and tattooing for my since I was a teenager. I
Mm-hmm.
thought they were just the coolest thing in the world, and I've always wanted them, and I've always thought it was an amazing thing. But I was always kind of into music as my art form
Mm-hmm.
growing up, and I didn't get a lot of time to put any energy into any other avenues of art.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably a couple years ago, I was getting pretty kind of burnt out with the because I do the shop managing here, but I would always be playing on the road for hire with different bands because I
Yeah.
play guitar. Um, and when you do that a lot, it becomes a job like anything else does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an art form, and I wasn't doing anything creatively with it. I wasn't writing music. I wasn't recording anything, and I was kind of looking for something artistically to have an outlet that wasn't music. Um, and Lee started showing me how to draw in because nobody really explained to me how my brain worked.
Mm.
There's a book called Drawing from the Right Side of Your Brain, Drawing from the Left Side of Your Brain. It's one or the other. That explains to you how to if you're a right-minded or left-minded thinker, how to take that and just acknowledge it and change it, use it differently so you can actually replicate what you see in front of you onto paper. And all of a sudden, for some reason, when he showed me, it was like something clicked. It was like, oh, okay, this part I understand. So from there, I started drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing, and that's kind of eventually started working on how to tattoo. I've always been a nerd about all that stuff.
Yeah. The
I'm
technical aspect of
oh,
it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Even when I wasn't doing any drawing or anything like that, or if it wasn't even on the horizon as a possibility. I know everything about machines. I know everything about needle groupings and inks and
Yeah, you have
power
a
supplies,
very
all that stuff.
analytical mind.
Yeah.
We've never discussed it, but I've noticed it myself that you seem to tunnel in and want to know the science of things.
Yeah.
You get really invested in the fine details,
Yep.
which is a lot of people just look at things broadly.
Yeah.
And so I've noticed with you, it's like you become fascinated, almost fixated.
Yep.
Which I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I've been that way for everything that I do.
mm-hmm.
I like to get into the minutia of something and figure out what makes the best of that work. Because when you're in a practical sense, for your job or for whatever it is that you're doing, if you have the ability to achieve whatever the best is because of XYZ, because you know all these things to it, you don't have the same kind of hindrances that you might have if you don't know those things.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the practicality. Like you'll see me when you're getting tattooed.
Yep.
I'll just go over there and stand and
Yeah,
just
you're studying
take
what Rick's doing. Oh,
yeah, because his art application, it seems like such a simple thing in terms of oh, we're putting black here, right? But to do it in a way that is the least trauma and the best healed effect and all of those things and at a good pace.
Yeah.
Anybody who has tattooed or has started tattooing will understand that a lot of you trying to get what you want to come out is very difficult. It's very difficult to achieve the result that you want, and there's a lot of different moving parts that you have to keep in mind when you're doing it. So to see people that are proficient at a very high level doing it with such ease and effort, you can take little things that they're doing, and as long as you can notice them, it kind of helps you understand what their 15, 16, 17 years of doing it, you can take a lot of their hiccups along the way and then learn from them.
Right,
You know
and
what I mean?
that's where some people will come over, or when I've been in other shops, they'll be getting particularly traumatic-looking tattoos done.
Yep.
Like the time Lee was doing a big red rose. We had the rose there, but he was turning it red, and we were adding filigree to the back of my head, and I was bleeding a lot, and there was
Yep.
a lot of red ink too, so it looked like I was bleeding even more.
Yeah.
So people were gathering around to watch,
Yeah.
but they weren't gathering around to watch how the process was working, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't like I'm looking intently trying to figure out how to do this best. It's
Yeah.
they're watching for the shock of it. Where when you'll come over, it'll be like less emotional, more like analytical, like
Yeah.
what's happening here.
Yep.
Like, and I can read that stuff on people's faces.
Mhm.
Where there was a time I was getting my knee ditch lined again at another shop,
Mhm.
and everyone's like, "Ooh," just cringing, and it's not like, "Oh, you're doing good putting that." It's like, "Oh God, that has to hurt," right? It's
Mhm.
coming from a different place. It's coming from the heart, not the head,
Yeah.
right? And I tend to go more the way you do with things.
Yeah.
Not quite to the same extent. Like I still have a bit. I think I'm meeting somewhere in the middle on that,
Mhm.
where I do care about the small details, but not too much.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm able to see it in others on both sides that
Mhm.
way, where I can be like, yeah, I can get the emotional part of this, but also the really fine details of it too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, for me, like the emotional part is beforehand.
mhm,
So, like, for me, like with your pursuit, your bodysuit, your blackout project, for me, the emotional part happened already.
yeah,
The way that I look at it is like the design or the emotional, the inspiration, all that stuff has happened. It's kind of like when I look at it like if you're gonna write a song, the inspiration is the first time that you kind of figure it out,
yes,
and then
yeah,
every single time after that, you're basically trying to build something that you got a glimpse of, right?
mhm,
Like if you had that beautiful inspiration of writing a song or something like that, and then you kind of get it, and then you put it on paper, and then every time after that, the inspiration, you're trying to replicate what that inspiration showed you, right?
yeah, yeah,
So like for yours, it was like this inspiration of a black bodysuit. There's that kind of artistic, creative genesis,
yeah,
and then everything after that is the replication of it. Like you're creating it, yes, but the inspiration has already occurred.
mhm,
That's the way I like, and that's one of the things that I always thought with. I wish someone had explained to me that artistic stuff, and in terms of drawing and tattooing and things like that, like you have the same process where it's you've got this inspiration for an idea or a concept or a layout or the vision happens,
mhm.
and then the rest of it is still the replication. And I I knew that for music. I didn't understand that for drawing or
I
art.
think it's all form of creation to some
Hmm.
extent, artistic, inspired, not practical. Anything that you don't have to do,
Yeah.
anything that's a project born of passion, right? Because like I have always considered myself an artistic person.
Hmm.
Now that doesn't mean I'm going to paint you a picture, and it doesn't mean I'm going to draw you one either. And
Yeah.
I'm not a tattoo artist. I'm a cook. I've been a cook my whole life, and you could call that an art, but that's not my art form. My
Hmm.
art form has always been expression
Yeah.
in general, and my avenue has been I'm very good with words.
Mm.
The written word, I can write. I have written so much in my life. I write. People read my captions and they're like, you don't just write captions, do you? Like you've got to write like a column or something."
Hmm.
I don't do anything with it, but I have a notepad at home that's just full of poems and musings and little thoughts. And
Hmm.
I ended up one time sitting down and I don't even know what spurred me on to this. It might be because I've had such a storied love life for my age.
Hmm.
Like it's been kind of up and down and all over the place. But I ended up writing 55 pages of a book that I never finished. I
Hmm.
just lost. I don't know if I lost inspiration because I went and I actually found it because I was writing when I was with my wife,
Hmm.
but I hadn't told her that I was writing it. And we were just talking the other day, and we were talking about what if I were to write, and she her and I were talking about this, and I said I wrote 55 pages of a book 2 years ago, and she's
Hmm.
like, when did you do that? And so I went and I found it, and I was reading some of it to her, and she's like, why don't you finish this?
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know why I don't finish it. Like it just because I had the idea in mind of it's the story is there's this new way to date. It's like a blind date type thing,
Mhm.
and everybody goes and meets, and an algorithm chosen match is made where you only find people that are compatible with you. They don't even show you people that could not be compatible with you.
This is probably coming.
But it's done as a masquerade too, where everyone has to wear a mask, so you can't even see looks.
Yep.
That's
Blind
just
date,
it's the
basically.
theme of the occasion, and the setting is everyone dresses nice and
Mhm.
whatever, right? Like I have an old timey kind of ballroom masquerade thing going on,
Mhm.
and there's a glitch in the machine, and the main character ends up meeting a girl um, that he wasn't supposed to meet. She
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to be matched. And 5 minutes into the conversation, and it's the best conversation he's had all night, the woman ends up being kind of pulled away from him and replaced because this was a mismatch and
Mhm.
you're not supposed to meet this person. But the main character is already kind of fallen for this person,
Mhm.
and now he has, you don't know her name, you don't know anything about, and so then it goes on with him trying to figure out who that was and never being able to, and then having all of these random matches and bad experiences. Again, I never even finished it up to this point because he
Mhm.
never even met this woman up to where I'm
Yeah.
at in the book. But this was the idea. It was going to be a 3-part series of this guy trying to find this girl that he was never supposed to be with,
Mhm.
and in a very futuristic but somehow classy setting.
Mhm.
Anyway, it might be a bad idea, it might not be, right?
It's not a bad idea,
But
in my opinion.
I mean, it's one of those things that it's not necessarily even what it was about. It was that I was finally writing something,
Yeah.
and I just stopped. And I don't really know why that is. I just kind of lost interest in it.
Well, I mean, if you are a creative person, you've had the idea in your head. Technically, the story is kind of complete. You've seen the vision.
I know what it looks like.
So the problem is that there. This is something that I think a lot of people get hung up on. Is like for people that are mainly the ideas guy. Like everybody sort of talks about that. Like, oh, he's the ideas guy.
Hmm.
Where it's like you need people around that are kind of constantly only caring about the inspiration side of things. Because that's what I hear. I hear like you were inspired to
Yeah.
do a story. You've got the vision of the story, and then um, the because the actual writing of it is would be kind of boring compared to it, right? Because you've already got the experience of the tale in your own head, so you have to kind of put it onto paper for someone else to digest, which takes a lot more of a logical, critical thinking, um, um, like assembling a puzzle almost. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like you are trying to put to word something that your brain has already completed,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people get hung up on in the application of their creative idea.
Well, I agree with that, but I find it strange in my case because I do enjoy writing.
Sure.
Like, but I think that the problem for me is maybe that um, when I go to write something, the thought is usually contained within a paragraph or
Yeah.
two,
Yeah. You can see completion.
and I'm really good at making a paragraph or two sound really good
Yeah.
and bite, like
Yep.
where you really catch.
Yep.
But when you have to do that for hundreds of pages, I don't think that it's that I can't. I think it's that I'm just not used to writing in that volume.
Yeah.
And then it's like, am I putting too much? Am I putting? And then you almost need an editor coming in
Mhm.
and going, oh, none of this is interesting. You need to take this out. You need to
Yeah.
streamline this. This thought carries too long. Like it's
Well, and you can think of it too like there's a part of your brain that is not used to working out in this respect.
oh yeah, for
Like
sure.
because to sit down and focus and write something for a length of time, you're going to have a place where your brain taps out,
Hmm.
and it might be short, it might be an hour, it might be 2 hours, who knows. But there's going to be something in there where your brain kind of goes, "Okay, man, I'm done. I got all that's all I got." And then you kind of have to consistently give yourself the ability to build that up.
See,
I find that with this too. Like any tattooing and things like that, my brain gets exhausted after
yeah,
a certain amount of time.
right. And see, for me, like when I stopped writing, it was like there was no intention that I wouldn't write more
Mm-hmm.
because I'd been writing for days periodically. Like it was
Yep.
like weeks of just kind of in my spare time, I would write a little more.
Yep.
And then one day I just didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there was no desire to again. And then I didn't even realize that I hadn't written anything in a while. Till like a month later, I'm like, oh yeah, I just kind of gave up on that. And
Yeah.
then it happened again. Lee was bugging me for a long time. Still brings it up now and then. You got to write an autobiography, like, and it'll be a picture of the eye and a whole bunch of black work on the cover of a book, and it'll be the man behind the pain kind of thing, right? Like, and it'll sell God knows how many copies just off the cover. Right? People will want to know why you did this.
Mm-hmm.
That's always what people want to know.
Yeah.
But I got like 20 pages in, and I hadn't reached past age 6, and I'm like, this is going to be way too long, and I don't know what anyone's going to find interesting in it. But if you want to know the whole story, you have to go back really far, because there's a lot of shit that happened early on, and I don't always know what, even with this podcast, like I watched episode 7 the other night, and I liked that episode, but I was like, it might be a little too much for other people to appreciate, you know, like where it's like you have your idea and you find that interesting, but does anyone else?
Well, you never know until it's out there, right?
Right.
Which is the kind of good and bad part about investing so much time into something about it like a book. Because if you do that and it catches on and people find it interesting, then all of a sudden all your time was worth it, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, and you don't know about that, you can't.
You miss all the swings you don't make, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we know this.
Yeah, and that's where I like where most media is going right now. I like that people can swing more, and things that have things that are of interest to people kind of find their way. It seems like, I don't know, I could be wrong the way I'm seeing that, but like it seems like since there's so many more avenues for people to get at stuff that they find interest in, it feels like there's more people that can have a quicker reach, because like even this, like the podcast, the barrier to entry was us deciding to do it and figuring out a way to do it and just doing it.
Yeah.
It was not like, okay, well, we got to come up with an idea for a show, and then we got to go take meetings, and then we got to like, I remember that with when I was in a rock band, and it was like, you're going to go meet with labels to get access to a loan. Like the whole structure of the record industry was not explained to me when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea being like, okay, well, they're going to loan you some money, which you have to repay whether or not you do it, whether or not your record sells or not. And you're probably not going to make any money even if you do. So you're going to be indebted to these people. They're going to own your stuff. You're not going to own it. And it makes it so you can make something and then pay it off, and then make something and then pay it off. Whereas if you just make it yourself and pay it off by doing the grunt work, you own everything. You don't have to repay a loan. You're repaying yourself.
Yeah.
And I think now most media is kind of getting into that place where it's like, okay, well, we can just do it ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And then we'll figure it out.
I call this the new. We've talked about this before, but I've said it before we talked about it. Because at first I was like, did Kevin give me that idea? But I was like, no, I've thought of this before, as being your own social media personality and using all the platforms and venturing into different areas is a new entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like being on TikTok, being on YouTube, being on Instagram, being on Facebook if you are, like whatever, Snapchat, any of that. And then using each of those platforms a little bit differently per platform. Like my TikToks are 10 seconds, you know, this is an hour to 2 hours almost now, right? Knowing the platform and then running that platform that way. And then if I were to write a book, and then if you're writing an autobiography, right? Doing strange interviews for Unilad or any, like all of this stuff is how you can manage yourself into a higher position. Yeah. Right? You can kind of, I think that there's probably a little bit of top end fear, and that's why the algorithms try and slow things down so much, because they don't really want it to be free for just anyone to climb out of the bottom. I don't think people want, I don't think controlling interest likes the idea of people on the bottom finding a ladder out.
No,
Not easily, anyway.
no. I
Like
think it's like the lottery.
yeah,
Like the lottery is
Hunger
not meant.
Games or something.
Yeah, the lottery is not there for people to win every single time, and it's not to a degree of wealth that they want everyone to have access to, right? Like,
But just like we're seeing this, how many other people see it, right?
Mhm.
Like how many other people have gone, oh, if I just run all my shit and I get it all together and I push different ways, eventually I'll get through.
Mhm.
So it has the same appeal as the lottery, right? Because so many people are going to buy a lottery ticket thinking I
Yeah.
might be the one, right? It gets to that part of the brain, I think.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's weird though that like we love these apps and things like that, and they all build on the same kind of foundation. Starts almost every single one of these, which is the organic growth.
Yeah.
They give you something unfettered, and then as the platform grows and they become more powerful as they view it in terms of data, that's literally all that means is like data mining.
Yeah.
So the fact that they can know more about the people that are using those platforms is all that they're talking about when it comes to power. They don't care about anything other than that because that's the only monetization. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we want to be able to create other revenue streams.
Yeah.
Right? And the other revenue streams, the profit mentality, the everything that goes against the way that these things are started, they're started always as this kind of like you could almost say altruistic, because it's like, oh, it's social.
Yeah.
We're getting people together. You want to know what your friends are doing, all that stuff, and then it becomes, oh, billions of dollars. Let's do the billions of dollars.
Yeah, let's get that money.
Yeah. And let's have to testify before Congress and all that stuff. Like,
yeah. And try and look human while you're doing
oh
it.
my God.
By the way, which not really working for him.
I mean, but that's the money corruption thing
Yeah.
is real. And then all of a sudden you get to a place where it's like, okay, well, the money is worth it enough that they have to take the essence of whatever this thing started as and remove it because the money's just too good.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get your TikToks, which then kind of, it's the same starting point of like unfettered.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you got millions of views and
Well, this
millions
is
of
it.
people downloading it.
This is recently Instagram brought out Reels.
Yeah.
And I made a TikTok video about this because I was just like, this is just absurd. Like, I got to say something. I was like, they don't get why people use TikTok. They don't use it because the content is amazing.
No.
They use it because you can actually get somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? So on Instagram, I'll have a reel, because I've used them, that'll get 16,000 views, which probably sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's barely anything, really.
Well, it's like just over 10% of your following.
Yeah, and it's not even, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But on that same video would get millions on TikTok.
Yeah.
So why am I using Reels?
No.
Like,
There's no incentive.
I don't even like that content myself. I do it for the purpose of being found, and then that exposure brings them to your brand, right?
Yeah.
So they're not getting it. It's not the short videos that people are, maybe some people are loving that, but it's, from a creator's point of view, it's because it trends and it goes, on Instagram it doesn't.
Well, and I think one of the things that will always be, as these apps progress and they get you into places that are with different forms, like Snapchat was one, and then Instagram tries to kill Snapchat by doing the stories, and then the TikTok thing, and now they're trying to do Reels. And granted, they have enough money and enough people using it that they'll probably do okay with it. But the common theme is that these new apps come in with the same advantage, which is no restriction.
Yeah.
If you don't have that monetization restriction built into the app from the onset, people like that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that they garnered success in the first place. Like, that's one of the reasons that YouTube is the biggest thing that it is, because it didn't have ads. It didn't have all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was just a place for you to put out a video, and then hopefully people would enjoy it. Now all of a sudden you've got the millionaire game in YouTubers, and then all of a sudden it's like, everything is monetization. Everything is ads. Everything
Yeah.
is pay to play kind of
And
situation.
it's the kind of segmentation that I hate because like I'll go to look for a video on a thing that I like, and there will be few results, and then you'll look another time and you'll get more results, and I'm like, why was this guy not showing up before?
Mm-hmm.
I dug and I dug and I dug, and I only found 5 people creating a video on this topic.
Yeah.
But there's probably 5 million people out there doing that,
Yeah.
right? But you only see the ones they want you to see.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because how many guys are trying to get noticed and don't even have that chance, right?
Yeah.
But there's no amount of digging. Like, say you have 1 subscriber and you make a whole video series.
Yeah.
There's no chance that that's going to come across my screen, even if I'm looking for it, unless I type in your name in full. It's like, well,
Sometimes that doesn't even work.
right, it does, and if they don't want you to, right?
Which is scary.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I can type in someone's name perfectly or their handle perfectly and not see them. That's very strange.
Well, when I have a friend that had 2 Instagram accounts with the same name, just slightly spelled different, and his bigger account was below his smaller account in my search. So, for whatever reason, his bigger account had been bumped down the list of importance, even in my search engine. Even though he had 60,000 more followers on his bigger account than his smaller account, it was at a lower level in the search than the smaller account, because
Weird.
they must have flagged him or something, like, do not promote this guy anymore. And it's like, why don't you just let things be? Like, why can't you just leave things alone?
Well, I mean, you get people into jobs, and those jobs have to justify themselves. So they come up with reports and situations to show that they found that, oh, if this guy does this, we should have a punitive measure for that. You know, it's everybody that's trying to justify having a salary. Because, like, really, if you were to, especially in the tech world, if you go, oh, this works great, sweet, good job,
And then
guys.
no one's, yeah.
Let's hang out for a little bit. Then all of a sudden, maybe someone's gonna overtake your app.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You always have to kind of be tinkering, but you know, nobody seems to be able to communicate whether or not the tinkering has ruined it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I was gonna take us back to the point about your tattooing and,
Right.
and the art, just because we got off on a tangent, as we often do.
That happens.
I think I would have seen myself better at writing songs or something than books, because it's just like you can do that and you'd be fine tuning it forever, but you could spit out the basis of it pretty quick, and then you double back and you change things. Like my captions, I'll write them out, and then I'll go back later and, oh, this is a little rough, and you sharpen it up a bit, and you're like, okay, now it's good.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if I have it in me to write a 500-page book, or.
Well, today you don't, but over the course of time you do.
So is that where you're at with tattooing, where it's like you can only do so much now, but you'd like to be able to do more one day?
Yes.
Like, how does that process develop?
So
for
I mean,
you?
for me, like the style that I quite like right now is I mean, I love realistic stuff. That seems to be the way my brain likes to work.
But you also have some Japanese stuff on you too.
Yeah, I mean, Japanese for me is I love it in terms of the history of it. It's an old art form in terms of tattooing. They've been doing it for a very long time. I mean, tattooing's been around for so many years.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we don't really know, but I mean, I think it's like 2500 BC. There was that person mummified that had 57 tattoos, and like, it's something that's been with us, or we're always kind of constantly modifying ourselves. But the Japanese art form has a lot of history to it, and a lot of significance, a lot of meaning. A lot of it was done by the artist for the person, and it wasn't the person's choice.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I see this person in this way, and this is the story that I'm going to tell on their body to represent them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool. You know what I mean? Like I've always had a fascination with it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think Japanese bodysuits, when they're done well, are some of the most beautiful in the world.
yeah, and they were
Like,
like one of the most cultures do something with the flow of the body.
yeah,
Japanese were very big on the bodysuit. It was a thing, and that's awesome. It's the respect of the human form and using it as a full canvas, and I think it's so damn
there's so
cool.
many rules to it too. Where if you get someone who doesn't know what they're doing, it's like that, the anatomy of that
Yeah,
dragon or the
yeah,
scales on that. It's just
yep.
it's bogus.
And I
Doesn't
mean,
work.
you know, like the art form has evolved quite a far way. Like you can obviously still get your very traditional, but I mean, even just in
It's
terms of using color, like we have color that they didn't have.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's like we get to kind of evolve the art form from there.
Though that being said, it seems to me less open to interpretation than most. Like you don't have like you have new Japanese tattoos, but
Yes.
it's not like where you have traditional tattoos and neo-trad. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Where it's or even new school, where
Yeah.
it's like everything is distorted and blown up and weird proportions and stuff. Now, Japanese tattooing is a very defined style and look, and you can see
Yeah.
it like right away. You go, "That's Japanese traditional tattoo,"
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's very bold and distinct.
Yep.
And though, like you said, there have been some updates, like I can still, whenever you look at that a tattoo like that, you know what it is right
Yeah.
away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you see some bad Japanese tattoos, though, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, why did this guy even try?
Well, it's like with anything, you know what I mean? Like it seems so simple to do it, but to do it well and a level of high proficiency and to have it look right, even like with traditional tattooing too, like American traditional and Japanese traditional, the the really high level stuff is super simple but done in a way that's perfect. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you know, it's kind of like with blackouts. Like everybody thinks, "Oh, I could do that,"
Hmm.
and then they swing and miss because it's not as easy as what everybody thinks it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like even just pulling a good line is really really hard. Like that's one of the hardest things
People.
for me anyways. Like
Yeah. I was gonna ask you, what is the hardest part for you?
pulling a really great line.
Yeah.
Yeah. My brain, especially like when it comes to like shading and things like that, it seems happier like building shades and things like that.
Like
But
you would
to
draw.
yeah, like
Yeah.
sketching with a pencil kind of thing.
See,
To
I've
build up
seen
shades.
tattoo artists that I'll never name, but where they're running a line like they would draw it,
Mm.
and it's like that's not how it works.
Mhm.
It hurts, and it's gonna be broken up looking,
Yeah.
and you can't stop and start. You
Yeah.
gotta just pull the goddamn thing.
Yeah.
You gotta commit.
And like to get my brain to settle down and do the methodical pull of a line perfectly, it's something that I'm having to train my brain to do.
Probably anxiety inducing,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like if I don't do this perfect, it's gonna be fucked.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna
Yep.
have to thicken that line, and then
Yep.
eventually, how thick is it?
Yeah.
Because if you just keep thickening it, you know,
Yeah,
you've
you're
got
gonna have a huge.
now it's not
It's a
a
block.
line, it's a shade
Yeah.
or whatever, right? Like it's a block now.
Well, and for me, I'm self-critical. Like I hold myself to a very high standard in anything that I do.
Yeah,
And with this, it's that level's so much higher.
yeah,
Because like if I'm gonna alter someone's skin for the rest of their life, it's gonna be good. I don't care. I don't care what I have to do. I don't care how hard I have to work. I don't care any of that stuff. Like I will put in whatever time needed to get myself to a place where that person will be happy with that for the rest of their life.
Well, you don't want to. First off, you don't want it coming back to I screwed it up. Let alone,
Yeah.
you don't want to be giving someone something that they're unhappy with either, right? So it's not only is it a lot on your shoulders, but you'd be putting a lot on another person's too. So
Yep.
that's got to be like, for people with anxiety, I can't imagine tattooing is easy. Like if you got a lot of anxiety, like
I've met a bunch of artists that are highly anxious people, but I think that for some people that tattooing is the calming.
they like you get the control of it.
Yeah,
Mm.
because like some people are, especially if you start off with like tattooing yourself, and you kind of get used to some certain things with yourself or your buddies, or there's like a bunch of the learning process that I think a lot of people will be very kind and accepting and things like that. So it's like, you know, if you're starting off tattooing, many people will let you tattoo them and they will be happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just you did it. The thing is on me. That's cool. Whereas like I don't I for myself, I need it to be a bit better. I
Well,
need it
this
to be a
is
bit
it.
higher level.
Like, how many times are people just happy to have a new tattoo,
Yeah.
whether it's good or bad? It's
Yep.
like, I don't care that it sucks.
Yep.
It's here.
Yeah, sweet.
Look
It
at
happens.
this. It's nice new tattoo. I didn't
And
even
there
have
is-
to pay much.
There is something to that, like the experience part of it.
Yeah.
To have an experience and have that thing, I'm in favor of that as well. Just for me, I am too harsh on myself to not do it
Yeah.
that way. You know what I mean?
Is that Rick?
Probably.
Rick? It's going. It
Yo,
is.
bro. Well, you know, keeping it real.
Yeah. I was just like, it's either Rick or Scott. Is Scott here today, or is
Not today.
he
No.
wasn't here last week? So
No, not today.
people keep asking me to have him on again.
Oh, yeah.
That. 'Cause-
Well, Scott's such a good dude.
Well, I don't even think it's because like, oh well, we really want to see you talk. I think it's just because he, as that podcast went on, just kept generating kind of new branches I could take. Where it's like, I don't have time to talk about all of this.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
where with you and me, we're gonna talk about. We have time to talk about anything because we're gonna do this
Yep.
week after week, so we'll get there.
Yep.
Or with Scott, I was like, I could hang on that, or I've got to let it go because we're going in this direction.
Yeah.
So I didn't really realize all the different avenues it could go down until
Yeah.
after I watched it. And I was like,
Well,
holy crap, there's 5 hours here.
I think that's why Rogan has his 3-4 hour long podcast. Because,
Yeah,
like,
some people you have to.
Yeah, because if you just wanted to sit down with him, no time obstruction, and get into each thing that you wanted to get into, yeah, you're 3-4 hours easy.
That's
You know what I mean?
where, like with this, it was like, at first I was like, well, let's aim for like half hour, 45 minutes. I don't know how long we can. And then I'm like, no, that's not enough.
No,
Because
and
any thread you pull on takes time.
yeah,
Yeah.
but this is also part of the muscle stretching thing.
Yeah.
Because like both, when we were intimidated about the idea of 45 minutes, like, oh, that sounds like a lot to talk, but
Yeah.
no, man, we can keep talking.
Yeah.
We have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on, and even within the realm of tattooing and body modification, like there's so many different avenues and areas, and
Yeah. Well, and the one I was going to ask you about is you mentioned tattooing yourself.
yeah,
And,
sucks.
well, see, I've always thought, like, does it suck? Like, 'cause maybe it does. Like, I've never done it, but I pierced myself.
Yeah,
And I've always found that when you're in control of the process, you're less concerned with the pain and you're more focused on, like, getting it right.
mm-hmm.
Like, 'cause I did my second bridge piercing,
Yeah,
and they both migrated a lot. They're done migrating. Like, people are always like, are those rejecting? Because they're thin, right?
Yeah.
They were like out to here.
yeah.
But the skin migrates to a point,
Mm.
and then eventually you get bars to fit that point, and you move on, right? These have been this size for 10 years. But
Yeah.
anyway, I did this top one myself, and I did a lot of my ear piercings myself and multiple other things. But I had the needle through the start of my bridge, and I'm staring in the mirror in my bathroom, and I'm like, I don't care if this hurts or not. Like, I have to make sure the angle's right,
Yeah.
right? It has to line up with the bottom. So I wasn't even considering the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I mean it. I could not feel any pain because I was too concentrated on getting the needle through in the right direction,
Yeah.
and also not coming down through the old hole, like
Yeah.
the other piercing, right? Like, there's all these things to be aware of,
Oh yeah.
and you're like, who cares if it hurts? This
Yeah.
has got to be. And so I always wondered if, like, tattooing was like that,
There's some element of that,
right?
because there is a lot of things to focus on.
Yeah.
But then there's also some element when you've gotten through that, you're still tattooing.
Yeah, it's still
know
a
what I mean?
painful experience, and it doesn't go as fast as the piercing. right?
No, that's the thing. Like you can start it, but then it's like once you get all the focus part going, and you're like, okay, I could stop now, except for I can't because I started this and we got to get it done. So it's like I think it's better in some ways But once you get into it, it's like a tattoo, and since it's you doing it, you can't just relax and grin and bear it and things like that. Like, you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
doing it, it stops. You know
Well,
what I mean? Like, there is something to that of, like, it's handy to have a tattooer that's just gonna do it.
I've had people say, especially during quarantine when I wasn't getting tattooed, why don't you just get a machine off Amazon and get some ink? It's like, yeah, I could see the layman thinking that, right? And there were times when I even thought that myself.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, and I know it, and this is why I didn't do that, is when you scar yourself up in trying to get something to work and you have
Yeah.
no idea what you're doing, it just makes it harder to cover for someone who knows what they're doing later. Like, I had a friend who was like, he's a lot like I am to some degree. Now, people wouldn't understand that to look at him because he doesn't have nearly as much work as me. But the way he talks and the journey he's starting, because he's really way younger than me, I know where he's going to be in a few years because he's going at it for a different reason than most people get tattooed. Most people get tattooed because they want a cool new image, right?
Yep.
This guy is looking for experience.
Yeah.
His first tattoo was his head. Like, not the back of his head, not the side of his head. He went on his skull
First.
Huh. And he has hair now already. So it wasn't about, I want to show off that I have a head tattoo. Like the guy who gets his first tattoos on his face.
Yeah.
You know, that thing where it's like, I'm doing this to be cool.
Yeah.
No, this guy wants the experience. Like, he has stretched cheek piercings. They're huge. Like, massive. Big labret, bigger than mine. Like, and he doesn't do it because, oh, this looks cool. He's doing this stuff for the experience. And anyone who's doing this stuff for the experience, look for them in 10 years and they're going to look a lot different than they do now.
Yeah, of course.
Because they're doing this stuff. It's their drive in life.
Yeah.
Right? I had another friend who, his first tattoo, I think I've talked about him before, was his nipples. He blacked out his nipples first. Because he's like, I need that experience.
Yeah.
It's not about the image, because what do black nipples look like?
Yeah.
Especially on their own.
Yeah.
Right? That's a different thing.
Yeah.
So this guy might even have more of that than I do, but just because he doesn't look like it doesn't mean that's not true, because everyone starts out with less.
Yeah, I think that mentality is really hard for people to understand. You know what I mean? Like,
the people who suspend, for example, what do you keep from that? Holes in your back.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it is the experience.
It's just the experience.
Yeah. And, like, there's not a good amount of the population that does this.
No.
But you do see it in a lot of different walks of life. You know what I mean? Like the experiential, someone that's getting driven by new. And I just think it's like the outlier. And people seem to have like, because I see it with you, how people view what you do, and they just don't understand. But it's not what you're getting done that they don't understand. I think it's the experiential person that they don't understand.
Mind blows every time.
Yeah.
Like, it's that Unilad video was everything I expected it to be.
Yeah.
When it happened, it was just like, yeah, look at these results are exactly what I said they'd be in the video, right?
Yep.
But people just don't get it. Like, why did he black out all those tattoos? They were so cool. That was the number one thing. And some people taking shots at my teeth, of all things. Well, I've never claimed to be, pearly whites. I drink a lot of coffee and tea, right? I do brush my teeth, but, I'm not a tooth model.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's funny what people will just
Focus
attack you
on.
for. But the results were exactly what I expected them to be. And it didn't bother me. It was like, this is still to my benefit.
Yeah.
But you can't make people understand this stuff, and I don't try to. But what you can do is recognize others like you. You can almost smell it on them, right? Because this guy approached me, the guy I was talking about, who has the cheeks, and he messaged me, and we've talked a bit, and he's got a really small page. And at first, it's always the initial shock that I reply, because it's like, I don't need to, God knows. But I could smell it on this guy right away. He's hungry for the experience, and he's gonna fill up quick. And I was trying to tell him the other day, I'm like, just because he's like, I don't know what to do with my neck. I'm like, just know that you're going to do something with your neck, and then try and plan around it.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna be a lot harder attaching a chess piece to a cactus with a guitar. You know what I mean? Than than it is gonna be to plan the whole thing out.
Yep.
You know?
Well, that's like in my function here. One of the things that I'm always trying to convince, like not convince people, but I'm trying to get people to see down the road a little bit. Because we do get that from time to time where it's like, yeah, man, I want to do a sleeve, but I got this thing here and I got this thing here. I don't know if we can maybe work them in somehow. And it's because like, if like for me, I knew I wanted to do sleeves. I just knew it. So it was like, I'm not going to get a first little tattoo and then have that be in the way of the sleeve. Like I knew that was the route that I was going to go. And sometimes you see people where it's like, they are picking the cactus with the guitar and they're thinking, oh, they're not thinking to the fact that in a year from now I'm going to probably want to start this sleeve. This might not go with that.
How is this going to fit together?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to, I guess.
Yeah. But like, you know, there are some people that just surprise themselves where they think, oh, I'll get a tattoo and I'll never get another one, and then they end up being,
good luck.
Yeah, it's
good luck with that.
Yeah, you're gonna probably want another one. That's just how it works.
Like, when I was younger, I didn't imagine myself with a bunch of tattoos. Just something that surprises people. Like, it's always like, I bet you got your first tattoo when you were like 13. It's like, yeah, no, it's much older than that. I mean, I wasn't an old guy when I got my first tattoo, but it's later than you would imagine, considering what I look like today. But I didn't imagine I would have a whole bodysuit. And even up until 6 or 7 years ago, I wasn't even sure I'd have full sleeves because I'm like, I didn't go the way that kids go these days. I started with stuff that was, well, I started with my son's name on my forearm. But after that, I had 2 tattoos here, tattoo here. Then I did a chest piece, back piece. Then I did a little neck tattoo. But like most of my stuff was under my clothes for the long first period while I was getting tattooed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because, oh, I'm afraid, because I already had, 40 piercings visible at that time. I had that covered. I had the shock covered. So tattooing to me wasn't as shocking as piercings were, I guess, or weren't making the statement that piercings were for me.
Yeah.
So my love of tattoos came from a different place than piercings did.
Yeah.
But I think, because I used to tell people, when I was younger, I probably would have been one of those kids that cut their arm up if I didn't get into piercing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because I think it's the experiential nature of it for me. Like, it's the pain part of it, and not enjoying that, but it's almost like testing yourself or seeing what things feel like. Like just wanting to know. Like every time we get to a new area that I haven't tattooed before, it's like, I wonder what that will feel like.
Yeah.
And there's this exciting curiosity about it.
Yeah.
And so that same curiosity has been, what would it be like to tattoo yourself? Right? And the only reason why I wouldn't do it is because I don't know how to tattoo.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make a mess of my skin. Like, I know people who are like, they'll send me a message. I did a little bit of blackout on my leg, and they'll send me a picture, and it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, their question is usually like, does this look normal, or is this okay? And it's like, well, no, it doesn't look normal, and it's not okay.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you think that you're just doing black, and it should be fine.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, you're cutting yourself up, and none of that's going to stay. And then you're going to have some tattoo artist like seeing you, and maybe he will say it to you, and maybe he'll just think it, but he'll think, why did you do this? And now I have to fix it. This is my job to fix it, right? And I just never want to do that to someone.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I understand it because there's tattooing yourself seems like to the layman and doesn't understand the intricacies of what's going on. It seems like, well, you should just be able to blah.
Yeah.
And then like a buddy of mine did that, and he turned a little spot on his leg into hamburger. Like, it's textured. It's terrible. And that because if you don't understand the way the skin works, if you don't understand what's going to happen when you put that machine onto your skin in a way that's incorrect, you're gonna create that result, and it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
And you may slowly learn from that, but if you have no guidance, oh man,
How much damage are you doing while you're slowly learning that?
so much, just so much damage. And like, I understand. I almost kind of appreciate the vivacity to go after something like that and just do it.
Yeah.
But some modicum of understanding or coaching, or granted, I'm glad that he tried first on himself and not on someone else. And
Yeah, you open your own shop. I got a tattoo machine. Come
Yeah.
on in, I'll give you a deal.
Because like at least when you're on yourself, you can feel the difference of what's happening. Like you have to endure it, so like you can feel the change and what the result is. Whereas when you're working on somebody else, you can't feel their pain. You might be able to see it, but like you can't. So you can hurt them a lot worse than you can hurt yourself.
Especially since people's pain tolerance is vary.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
if I'm working on myself and I'm making a hell of a mess of myself, I might not even know it.
Yep.
Right? Because, like, I've spoken about this before, but the idea is the mind can withstand what the body can't sometimes. So even though I might not be freaking out up here, maybe my body's like, holy crap, what are you doing to me? Right? And you don't even, your body and your mind don't work the same pace. Right? Later, your body is going to hurt you more, or it's going to hurt more than what it was hurting in that moment.
Yep.
Because a badly healed tattoo or a badly put in tattoo, a lot of the time doesn't feel a whole lot different until after.
Yeah.
Right? And until that day 3, day 4. And
Where you
all of a
start
sudden,
feeling beat up.
it starts getting weird scabs or maybe even an infection. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening?
Yeah.
And you didn't realize at the time, because a tattoo is just painful anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So once you're feeling that painful anyway, the differences don't make as much difference to you. Like, you can't necessarily pick apart always what's normal and what isn't when you're in that kind of pain.
Especially since the different areas of the body feel so different.
Oh, right. Like
So sometimes you might be in a state where you're getting to that point, and you're just like, oh, this part hurts a little bit more than I thought it would, or whatever, and you can kind of write it off to that. Whereas what's happening is your body is like, oh, I'm done.
So, for example, a great example of this I have fresh in mind is last Wednesday when Rick was working on me. That tattoo is healed beautifully. All of his work is healed beautifully. But when he was working on near my rump, that hurt a lot, right? But we got through that part, and that's fine. We then moved all the way back over here, and we drew a fresh bit of black here, and we followed it down here. Now, that was the first time in a while, and I didn't make a peep. And I probably say this all the time, but that was the first time in a while where I had to coach myself in the moment to breathe a little bit, because that sudden change of pace, and we did not slow down.
No.
Right? There was no stop in motion.
Yeah.
So we're going from over here to over here, and it's a very different feeling. And I won't even say that it's a worse feeling, but we've just opened up a whole new can of worms, and we got a long way to go, and the pace is fast.
Yeah.
And there's no breathing, so you're like, okay, I need to breathe. Breathe, because if I don't breathe right now, I'm going to be in a lot worse shape, right? Because you almost need to. It's like a war of attrition at that point, because we cover a lot of ground, right?
Oh yeah.
And I feel like people, if they don't do that move, they might even pass out, or they might tap out or whatever. But I was able to, I've done this before, so I was able to climatize again. But it's like this skin had gotten used to what's happening. This skin is like, oh, where are you now, right?
Yeah. Well, and you weren't covering anything there, so that's all new territory.
All
too,
new
right?
territory.
So that skin's responding for the first time.
Well, as Rick was saying, the difference in my already tattooed skin compared to my fresh skin is like good and bad. Because the fresh skin seems to react harsher, or like welt up quicker.
Yep.
Where the old stuff is harder to cover, but it doesn't seem to mind being beaten up a bit, because it's already calloused. There's some memory of the trauma there, right?
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag of good and bad.
Yeah.
Working on nothing and working on old work, and basically now I'm at a point that I've never been at, where Everything we have left to do down here is all fresh skin
Oh yeah.
because there's like nothing left to cover
Yeah.
anymore. At least while we're keeping these big pieces, because
Yeah, yeah.
everyone's like, "Are you keeping them?" Like, at least for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Because I think I know Rick doesn't really want to cover them.
No.
So it's one of those "I'll work with you" scenarios, right? Like, he's done everything I've asked him to do. This is the only thing he's made any noise about the
Yeah,
whole time.
literally.
Like,
Yeah.
he hasn't complained
Yeah.
one bit about covering anything he's done or otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So it's you're negotiating, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we can keep the Witch King.
Yeah.
We'll work with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hope you keep it as long as you can. Just that piece is so cool. There's so much texture to it and detail
And the work that went into designing it even
oh
was
yeah, it was a lot, and it looks so badass.
right. And
Yeah.
so you know, I'd like to keep a few things anyway, and people will be surprised to see that there's some pieces left down there because I've been saying that legs are basically full blackout, but I always said basically,
Yeah.
and then people fill in the blanks from there with, oh, they're going to be fully black, right?
Yeah.
Like, I still get, why would you black your whole body out? Your whole body. Who just makes their whole body black? It's like, you haven't taken 2 seconds to realize there's a lot of shit left on me. I have a huge back piece.
Yes.
It's massive.
Yep. Well, it's your fullback.
My basically, if you look at me from behind,
Yeah. You
there's
wouldn't know that
actually
you-
not that much blackout.
Yeah, legit. Because your whole back and then
My bum and
yeah,
then
your
my
bum,
thighs,
and then you have your thighs. Like that's
and
actually
the
a
whole
good chunk
back
of
of
you.
my head, my
Yeah.
whole head, like, and then the front looks very blacked out.
Yep.
But
But even still, that eyeball is still, and like your upper chest piece is
Yep.
very striking. So, and they're large pieces, so it's not like, I don't know. It's a good balance right now. You know what I mean? I like the balance of it.
yeah, what has been, other than tattooing yourself, what has been the hardest concept for you about approaching tattooing? I'm gonna ask because like I've had the thought to do it myself, right? And my problem with learning tattooing is time and like I've already got so much shit on the go. Where do I fit that? And
Yeah.
then doing something for free for a long time or less money, taking that time to do something like that, it's mind-boggling.
The hardest. So, I, the people that I seem to like I'm gravitating towards as artists are like the, really detailed, black and gray realistic artists. That seems to be kind of what I like. And one thing that I'm noticing that kind of came about when COVID started, because nobody could tattoo, was this this trend of posting your healed work. And because you don't really see a tattoo, like everything that they're posting is always the highest contrast and it's always brand new and fresh. And when it's brand new and fresh, that's great, but that person is going to live with it for the rest of their life and it should look great in 5 years.
Yeah.
So when I see a tattoo that they're posting and it's like, this is 4 years healed, this is 8 years healed, this is that kind of thing, and they look phenomenal, those are the people that I gravitate towards. So for me, one of the things that I am most frustrated with is how to get ink in the skin non-traumatically or with as little trauma as possible, because if you don't put it in efficiently, you're going to overwork the skin and it's going to fight you back and it's going to make it harder and it's not going to heal as well. So how to get ink into the skin in a way that's going to sit and settle and heal and last forever.
Yeah.
Because like doing it for day one is fine, but I don't care about day one. I care about 4 or 5 years down the road. I want people to be able to see whatever it is that I do and go, damn, that looks good, and it could be years from now.
Yeah.
So part of my problem is since I like to try and get efficient and proficient at things that I start, is like I get frustrated with the fact that I have to slow down and learn by application, because I want to get there. I want to figure it out and I want to get there fast. But sometimes you have to turn that part of your brain off and work through it and learn by experience. And you're not going to get there in a day. You know, the Rome wasn't built in a day kind of situation.
A lot of people are getting there in a day these days, and
Yeah.
you see the results
Yeah.
aren't great.
Yeah.
right? And they never figure it out, and no one ever stops them, and
Yeah.
it almost gets worse.
Yeah. And so for me, like the hardest part is I want to run before I can walk, and I I know where I want it to be,
Hmm.
which is great. I'm not sad about that. I want to be able to be. I want to have that. I want to hold myself to that high of a standard in that area, obviously. But it's hard to have to walk when you want to run,
Yeah.
and um, but I have to respect where I'm at and my understanding, and just even when you're a good example of this, every part of your body is going to be different to tattoo,
Yeah.
and Rick learned your skin over the course of some sessions. You know what I mean? Like now
Yep.
he's so proficient at your skin that you guys cover a great deal of space.
Yeah, we're
But
way faster than we started.
that's the
Yeah.
thing, right? Like, and when you're tattooing different people, you're learning them from the hop.
Yep.
So it's pretty difficult to kind of everybody's so different, each situation's so different. So you're already having to think about so many things, and then all of a sudden this new it's not a piece of paper on a desk. This thing lives, this thing breathes, this thing is going to experience pain when you try and tattoo it, and their skin is going to be unique. You're going to have unique issues. Like the second tattoo I ever did, um, as soon as I touched the skin, it raised up and went red.
Yeah.
And like by the time I was done the tattoo, it looked like I did it in red, like in color. And it's the second thing I've done, and it scared me. 'Cause
Yeah.
it was just one of those like I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't
So
know
what
what
had
to
happened
expect.
there when you, in retrospect, were you working too high on, like, too shallow in the
It
skin?
wasn't anything I
Or
had done.
so was their diet or their
Yes.
biology of,
Yes.
yeah.
So like um, they were in an inflamed state.
Yeah.
So, any level of irritation is going to come across in that respect. And it was on an area of the body that's going to get red anyways, but it shouldn't get red that fast. Um, so yeah, it was a scary.
Scarring, yeah. You probably have some, like, trauma almost from it, like, where it's like, God, did I do this to them?
Yeah, you get freaked out
Yeah.
for sure. And like there's there's something about it that I was very happy that happened in my second tattoo, because like it was very quickly like, oh, well, you still have to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's happening, so do it, work through it, figure it out, and because nothing's going to be perfect, you can't have it be a piece of paper on the page. You've decided to jab needles into something,
Yeah.
and it's going to have a response, and you need to be able to work with that and still learn and still grow and adapt, and um, not be scared of it, because realistically it's not your fault, it's not their fault. It is what it is, and we got to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So there was something to that I don't know, it helped.
I
It helped
think
in some way.
maybe it got the elephant out of the room early.
Probably, yeah.
Right, where you knew that was going to happen one day.
Yeah.
And it's better to happen early rather than once you're a little bit more established in your own mind.
Yeah.
And then you have that experience and it sets you back.
Yes.
Where you're at the ground floor already.
Yeah.
And going back this far from the ground isn't hard to do.
Yeah.
Where if you're climb, I'm a little more confident. And then you have that experience, it's like scares you all the way back. And you're like, maybe I really can't do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and like you can't control the canvas. Like you can't control what their skin's gonna do at that day. So it was a good learning experience that I kind of got that out of the way. I'm sure if it happened to me again, it'll still scare me, because it's like if you think you're fighting against the clock beforehand, you're really fighting against the clock. Like you can't go back into the areas the same way, because all of a sudden you can't see them.
This is it. I think I told this story a few weeks ago about I had an apprentice tattooer working on a piece here, and it was 4.5 hours, and it's not that big of an area, and I'm very patient with people, but I actually had to say, like, all right, like, I'm not tapping out on you, because I didn't. We finished the tattoo, and We did way more work on it than we even needed to. But there was one spot on the tattoo where I calmly said to him, no offense, but that skin is done.
Yeah.
You're now working against yourself. You need to let it be. You
Yeah.
can go do something else somewhere else, but that spot you're turning it into hamburger.
Yeah.
And now whatever you're putting in is gone.
Yeah.
And maybe even some of what you put in earlier is gone too.
Yeah. Well, and like, he'll be sitting there frustrated because what's happening in the skin is not what his hand is asking it to do.
Yeah. He
You know
has
what I
an
mean?
idea.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has an idea. I don't think
Yes.
he's just doing it to hurt me.
Yeah. And like I've had that experience many times, and I'm sure I still will, where it's like you're not stretching it correctly, or you're not using the right speed or needle grouping, or there's some sort of part of the equation that's off, and therefore what your brain is asking it to happen isn't happening, and you don't know why.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, I think this is one of the reasons that you have to have an apprentice and master mindset, because like you need someone that you can look at the situation, and rather than digging into it further and potentially hurting the person, you can step aside and go, okay, master, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I
wrong?
need some assistance here.
Yeah, and that's where I think this as an art form is. It has to be a master apprentice thing, because like it doesn't matter how many YouTube videos you watch. There's going to be a situation where it's unique to you in this scenario, and you don't know the answer because you are learning, and you need someone there that has had enough canvases under their belt that you can draw on and see like, hey, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Because like there's situations that again, I'm the shop manager. I see a lot of tattoos come through here, and I have seen situations come through here that, guys who have been tattooing for years will say, that's the first time I've seen this.
Yeah.
When a guy that's been tattooing for 15 years goes, oh man, I've never seen skin like that before. That's weird.
Yeah.
Because that person has done so many tattoos on so many different types of skin, and 15 years in, they're still saying, man, what's up with that?
Right. It just goes to show you how, we're all the same, but we're all not the same.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because everyone will be, 7 billion of us, none of us are unique. But
Yeah.
at the same time, we are all unique.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's no one human walking around with the same exact skin as another.
No. Well, that we know of.
Well, because the thing is like, sure, you could have, say you and I, at a base level, have the same skin.
Yeah.
If we did. I'm not saying we even do. But if we did, then it goes to, what are we eating?
Mm-hmm.
How are we sleeping?
Yeah.
What are we drinking?
Yeah. How hydrated are you? What
how
supplements
how
do
much
you
do we
take?
exercise? How many different variables go into what it's going to be like when you get a tattoo?
Oh, yeah.
And then you don't know. Maybe I had a drink last night. Maybe I had 6. Maybe I just took Tylenol and hoped that it's going to numb the pain, and now I'm bleeding like crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of external factors that
Oh, yeah.
the tattooer just has to go into it and figure it out, right?
Yeah, we can't control what's happening before the tattoo, and we can't control what's happening after the tattoo.
Yeah.
Those are both like very scary things. Not
You're
not
almost
always.
waving. Bye, I'll
Yeah.
miss you.
That's like honestly one of the hardest things, because like obviously if I'm at the front, I'm going to be helping people through their healing process for the most part. Unless it's something that's specific and the artist needs to get involved and talk to them. But for the most part, I'm going to talk most people through your mild irritations and whatever is going on. And one of the hardest things is that I can give everyone as much information, as much aftercare, as much, like we even use bandages that stay on for a longer time,
Yeah.
specifically because in that first 24 to 48, 72 hours, if you're in that area, it's more prone to open up,
Yep.
right? And then if you open up, you're going to get bacteria, you're going to get irritation, you might get an infection. So if we put on a bandage that's going to stay on there for 3 to 5 days, you've at least bought yourself some extra protection where that person hopefully won't ruin this tattoo.
Yeah, I had a memory of the Sanoderm
Yeah.
just yesterday I posted it, and like someone's like obviously didn't realize that it was an old picture. They're like, are you just trying that now? And I'm like, well, no, I did like Sanoderm for like a year and a half.
Yeah, you lived in Sanoderm
Yeah.
for a while.
And it was pretty good.
Yep.
Like the only problem I ever had with it was the days when the plasma was just too much.
Yes.
And it would just bust open. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, I really wish I could have kept that on. Because when I had the option of wearing it, it was always like, I'm on God mode or something.
Yeah, you
right?
got
I felt
you got
invincible.
protection. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's where like I I just try and set people up as best I can for you're dealing with a wound. A lot
Yeah.
of people forget that this is an open wound. It's like a road rash or something like that. Like it's an irritation that you need to be protective of. And so many people don't.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care, or they've had a small tattoo before, they've had a line tattoo before, and it was fine, but then they all of a sudden get this big color tattoo, and it's a totally different game.
Oh yeah.
Like the more ink you put into a place, the more of an ordeal your healing is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the amount of holes that are getting punched, and the amount of ink that's going in there, and the amount of plasma that your body's going to produce, it just goes up. So I just those are those things where I can't control it. I can't control what they're doing before the tattoo, and I can't control after. All I can do is like provide as much information as possible. Rick is really strict with how he addresses everybody's healing, and still, people don't listen.
No, well, people just want the tattoo. They don't care about what happens after. They want it to heal well, but they're not. It's the same way when we were doing the piercing. Like, it was like, I'm going to give you all this information. You're just going to nod along the whole time, and you just want me to shut up and do the piercing, right?
Dude,
like,
I feel so bad for piercers out there, because like, again, we are a very stringent shop with how we like with the information that we give, the instruction,
a lot of information.
Yeah. And we stress a lot on the taking care of it in the aftercare. And like, you'll get people come back and they'll be like, yeah, I don't know, something's going wrong with it. I'm doing exactly what you told me to do. And then you'll ask them, okay, so how are you looking after it? Nothing close to what we've said.
Yeah.
Nothing close.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, okay, well, no. What we told you to do was this. So you're not listening to us. You're not adhering to it. You're not caring for it well, even though you think you are.
Yep.
And it was very common. I mean, it is very common with piercings. But, that's, again, we can't control it. All we can do is the process, right?
It's the level of commitment, like we've talked about with piercings before, is minimal. Like, you walk in and you grab 5 if you want.
Yeah.
Right? It's very easy to just get it on a whim, and then what's the likelihood that you're going to care about it that much afterwards?
Well, that's the thing. Like, for you, the amount of commitment that it's going to take to stretch a piercing is huge.
Oh yeah.
That's time. That's discomfort. That's a lot of investment. Even in jewelry is expensive for anything that's custom shaped. So it's like, when I see you, I'm like, oh, you're not going to be an issue.
No.
You know what I mean? Anybody that's wanting to commit to that more extreme element, they're not going to be an issue. It's going to be the people that are like, oh, I just was walking by and I saw that you guys did piercings and I just like this. It's like, okay.
The guy that did most of my piercings back between 2000 and 2005, or maybe even as far as 2010, I think he was around. When he was leaving the industry, he was explaining to me why. Like, the big problem is, and this guy did work since the late 80s. Mm-hmm. He was piercing a long time. Yeah. He's like, if everyone was like you, there would be no problem.
Exactly.
Because you take care of things and you keep coming back.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they don't take care of things and they only want 2 or 3 piercings to begin with.
Yep.
So it's an industry it's not like with a tattoo where you get one, it tastes like another. Get one, tastes like another. Before long, you're a full body suit. Who's got a full body suit of piercings?
It's rare, man. It's really rare.
So it's not as sustainable, I feel like.
Yeah, I would agree to some extent, but I mean, it's the same. I would say there's a lot of tattoos where it's like, they're the one and done, or you're going to get 3 or 4, and that's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of those people.
There's a lot of those people.
And that's fine. I mean, like it's all walks of life for everybody. But, it's at the same time, I want people that are going to be able to take it seriously, because you shouldn't just go get a tattoo and jump in a pool. Yeah. Like, yes, you can have that kind of walk-in, exciting, spur-of-the-moment thing to get something small or even big. We have people that walk in and they want a sleeve, and it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
we talked about that. That's so good.
But like, it's one of those. It's the type of thing that Like we are held to such a high standard from like health services. Like we're basically a minor surgical cosmetic procedure
Mm-hmm.
is how we're considered. So it's like we're held to a certain standard, and the hope would be that that standard gets portrayed and respected afterwards. But again, I can't control it, and I wish I could. Like it would be great. But at the same time, sometimes you have
Live and let live.
yeah,
Like, they're gonna screw it up.
things
They're
go
gonna
wrong.
screw it
Yeah,
up.
it happens.
That's why you get the picture, right?
Yeah.
This is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna if it's walking around later all banged up, then maybe I don't want that picture.
Yeah, yeah, really. I mean, and it's really difficult to, like, the artists love to be able to see their work later
Mm-hmm.
and have it be like, yeah, that looks great, and you want it to be respected and cared for, and sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. I would say on the majority though, like on the whole shot, most people do great. You know what I mean? There
See-
is just there is some people that don't look after their stuff, unfortunately.
And for an artist that's really professional and really almost to a surgical level, like or like a sniper, like
Mhm.
Rick. The way I look at Rick is like he's like a surgical sniper kind of guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Very cerebral.
Yep.
For you to screw up that work, it's actually quite difficult to do.
Yes.
Like,
Actually, it is. Yeah.
You really have to screw it up.
Yep.
Like if you mess up a tattoo that he put in, you did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not saying you should feel bad about it, but the onus is not on him.
Yep.
Right? And I'll tell you that straight up because I've never had any trouble healing anything he's done on me
Mhm.
for over a decade.
Yeah.
So if you've got a problem with one of his tattoos, you need to look at what you've done.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's always the case because there are people who will fuck you up. Like
Mhm.
there are people who have dug me and ripped me up, and
Yeah.
I've had infections
Well, you've had the gamut,
before,
right?
Oh yeah,
You've
I've- been all over it.
Yeah.
I've had it where when I was working on this wrist, the first arm, not this blackout, we did my wrist like probably 4 times full color.
Ugh.
It was I had like fire here, and it's like a cuff, and
Yeah.
it came up around here.
Yeah.
But it looked great when we did it. But even when I got home that night, my arm was like a gauntlet. Like I had no wrist anymore. It was just a hand, and to here
A tube.
was swollen like I was wearing like a gauntlet. And then when it finally all of the inflammation came down, it cratered in everywhere, and there was all these chunky scabs all over it.
Oh man.
And then when those scabs came off finally, there was like almost none of the color there. It was all just this drab, like, because we'd built up like yellows and reds and oranges and pinks, and it actually looked really cool, like painterly stuff, right? Very artistic. But none of that healed.
Yeah.
All of it fell out, and it was just this ugly, like, it looked like I had like a skin disease.
Oh man.
And so it was like, okay, I lived with that for 6 months, and then we hit it again with all the color again. Another 3 or 4 hours on my wrist.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Lee is telling me, you got 30 minutes there. That's all you got. You can't be there for hours.
Yeah.
That skin's going to give up on you. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And so I've got people telling me what's wrong with this, right? But at the same time, this guy still wants to keep trying to fix it. So I ended up touching it up again.
Yeah.
And it got a little bit better each time, but it was still shit. But like you would see it where he's spraying me down with Bactine, like, let me get in there again. I'll numb it. No, get in there again. It's like, maybe don't get in there again.
I mean, I think that's what I hear in that is that same, like, the skin's not doing what I'm asking it to.
Yeah.
And
Frustration.
Yeah, frustration and not knowing how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Not even knowing really what the problem is, because if you knew what the problem is, you might be able to address it. But like, in that kind of situation, like,
It was hard for me to watch because
Yeah.
I felt bad for him.
yeah, oh yeah,
It
you
wasn't
can-
like I was in pain. I'm not saying I wasn't in pain.
Yeah, of
'Cause
course.
people are always like, "Oh yeah, you
don't
must
even
have been."
feel it.
But like, I honestly felt bad for the guy.
Yeah.
Where I was like, "Oh, I just wish you could figure this out."
Yeah.
Because you could tell it's hurting him on some level.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't it working?
Yeah.
Get in that skin. I heard him say it out loud a few times.
Yeah.
Get in there. Get in there. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
See, and
I'm
this
embarrassed now
I see
for you.
that kind of thing, and like when I've experienced it myself, like I don't want that feeling ever.
Yeah,
So for
yeah.
me, I am like, because it's a horrible feeling, like to be in the process of something and not be able to deliver what your brain wants to deliver, because you just don't have the knowledge base to understand what's happening and how to address it. And that's one of the reasons that, like, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna watch everybody and try and figure out and to get as much input into those situations as possible, because like that's a horrible feeling that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And um, it's just from a place of like, if that's happening, you should be able to stop and ask someone who's experienced this before, because that's the whole idea of this, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we're passing down knowledge, you're supposed to be able to have someone to draw from.
This such a problem these days is apprentices opening their own shops,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're the master,
Yeah.
and then they take on apprentices.
Yep.
It's like, you don't have the answers. How are you
Yeah.
instructing someone else?
Yep.
Like, I know this, and I'm not even a tattooer.
Yeah.
I know that you shouldn't be teaching. You shouldn't be tattooing on your own yet, let alone teaching someone else how to tattoo.
Well, apprenticeship in itself is like, you kind of have to. The people that I've seen be very successful at it are the people that are able to get out of their own way and kind of kill their ego and just listen
Yeah.
and actually listen. Don't just sit there and listen, like, hear and then do whatever you want to do. Like, to actually take in information, to be able to take criticism and put that criticism into work. A lot of people don't have that ability. A lot of people are too
Which
much
fascinates me, because we don't know everything. What we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean. This is a great way to live your life.
Yeah, yeah. I think partly is because, like, everywhere else, every other way of learning is not that, right? Like, teachers have to give, they have to be kind, they have to be gentle, they have to nurture, right? Whereas when you're in a field that is more serious, like trade, or in this case, you're altering people's complexion for the rest of their life. Like, there's a level of seriousness that I think isn't taken into account in most learning environments.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of people, they get used to learning in an environment that doesn't force them to take harsh criticism. And then when they get it, it's like, whoa, 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 hang on. You're supposed to tell me I'm great, but you're supposed to hamburger affect me. You're supposed to give me a good pause, like, and like, you're supposed to care for me. But it's not that they're caring for you. They're caring for the client, as well as your future work, as well as everything else, other than your ego. Your ego comes last on that list. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that.
I experienced this in my own way, and it's not to the same magnitude, but I teach that way. I'm a bit gruff with people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just tell you if you're fucking up. I do it all the time.
It's good.
And people do. I find that it's hard for people to get used to, but it's a better way to teach.
Yep.
Like, because I end up training almost everyone I work with, because I've been doing this for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And my approach is always very matter of fact. And it's not because I think I'm so great and I think you're so shit. It's that you need to hear when you're doing poorly. You need to hear when you're doing well. But if you're not doing well, I will keep my compliments sparse, because I want them to mean something when I give them too, right? Yeah. Where it's like, if you've done a good job, you've done a good job, because I wouldn't tell you that if you didn't.
Yes.
Right? And I think that people should teach that way.
Yeah.
And if you don't teach that way, I don't think you should be teaching, personally. I think that tough love is the right way to go with anything that you're creating to sell to someone else. Like, even though I'm just creating a plate of eggs or whatever, I'm like, that someone's paying for this. They're expecting it to be to a certain quality. So I'm not going to let someone do it half-assed and then it comes back. It's a reflection of me and the place and everything that we do there, right?
Yep.
So when you're selling something, and in this case it's more severe because it's permanent, that what you're selling is permanent, it has to be taken seriously. And it shouldn't be allowed to go out sloppy. And it certainly shouldn't be praised for being sloppy.
No.
Like, I've talked about this with Scott the other week. I see shitty work from some shops, and then it not only does it not get better, but the work keeps getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking at it and going, "This is fine. Let's give them bigger pieces now."
Mm-hmm.
So now you're making bigger crap on people's skin.
Yeah.
Stuff that you shouldn't have been doing this size is now this size, and eventually this size.
Yeah.
And all the lines are poorly done, and the shading is barely in there, and the colors are all like they look like someone threw up. Like it's not happening. It's bland. It's like nothing is saturated well. The lines are all like shaky, and
Yeah.
it's weak. And it's like, how is no one stepping in and helping this guy?
I mean that there's a couple of different theories on that. One, whoever's there doesn't want to help, because like it is a lot to take on an apprentice and to train and to be an instructor, and that's a lot of responsibility, and some people will take it on without really being able to walk that out, which that happens. Maybe their knowledge base isn't as broad as what they like. Maybe that's how they were done. You know what I mean? That's how they were apprenticed.
Yeah.
So therefore, they think that's normal. And a lot of people just tend to go with the idea of like time. And I hate that. I hate the idea that you think the longer you do something, the better. That like so like, okay, you're on this path and you're learning. Well, you're only at year 2, so by the time you're at year 10, you're gonna be dope.
Uh-huh.
It's like that's not true.
No.
I've seen many people in many paths that do something for a long time poorly.
Yeah, I see it all the time at work.
And it's in any industry, right?
Yeah,
like,
in any industry.
This is one of the biggest issues that I have with promotion due to seniority.
Yeah.
And I think like the further business gets along, the more you're seeing that, the more it's like, okay, well, just because you're old doesn't mean you're good at your job. Are you good at your job? That's the thing that you need to do to be at this level. And I think that's like
we see it in age too.
Yep.
Like you can be 80 years old and you can have done nothing with your life.
Well, like the expectation that we have here is pretty high. Like you've seen Cole's his progression.
Yep.
Cole started tattooing this time last year, and he is very proficient now. Like very proficient because he's held to a standard of man.
Well, I've seen Lee give him shit.
Yeah,
right?
man.
Like I've seen Lee ride him, and some people would think, oh, Lee's so hard on him. And I'm thinking, no, this is the way it should be done.
Yeah, because in a year he's progressed so far because of that kind of that pressure cooker thing, right? Like it's either you break and you break early so you don't ruin a bunch of people's skin, or you make your way through it and you become very good very quickly, in which case then if you're on that right path, in 10 years time Cole's going to be ridiculous. And that's, I think, not accepted in most walks of life.
See, my thing is I heard it saying a long time ago, it's great leaders don't make followers, they make more great leaders.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that's the way I tend to think about anyone that I'm working with. It's like if I'm going to be responsible for you, I want you to potentially be even better than me one day.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I'm this good, I want you to be this good.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not going to happen overnight, but it could happen because the guy who trained me maybe was only this good, and then I got to here, and then I can get you here, and then you can get another guy here, and we can keep getting better.
That's how industry progresses in an art form.
Right.
Something that's passed down like this, because like the functionality, the application process, the kind of those things are all things that are skills and can get passed down, and if they're passed down correctly, then all of a sudden it's refining your eye and training you as an artist and training your attention to detail.
Yeah.
Because like I will always say it, which is like how narrow can you narrow your lens? A lot of people keep their lens for detail fairly wide, where they look at something and they go, yeah, that looks like that's cool.
Oh yeah.
Whereas like what size of detail do you care about? And if that detail's real small, then you are going to be at a certain level of proficiency.
See, this is always where I sometimes catch myself in these conversations, and I'm thinking what people might think from the outside. Here's a guy with an all black tattoo telling me about what a good tattoo is. it's all black, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's all saturated though, right? It's when you look at it, it doesn't look like someone with no skill put it in. You might say there's no artistic direction.
Yeah.
You can say what you want about that. Art is up to interpretation, but it was well done, right? I don't care what you say. The guys who did my work did a good job. Good luck getting things to look this solid and saturated with someone who has no idea what they're doing.
Oh, dude, if I tried to do the same thing on you, it would look so bad.
I've seen it. Like
It would look so bad.
What I hate is when you see these big, like they're doing a lot of realism sometimes, and it's like, did my son draw this? But then you see the reaction from the public is like, oh, that's amazing. It's like people really don't look at things the same way that you do if you're in the tattoo sphere. Like I'm not a tattooer, but I spend so much time looking at tattoos that I notice the things that didn't work.
Well, you know what's possible.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of people don't understand. Like I still get people walking in here where it's like, yeah, I don't know. I heard that color doesn't really stay well. It's like,
yeah.
I understand that mentality. I understand that 15 years ago, or 20 years ago or whatever, like that. But the industry has progressed so rapidly. The technology has progressed so rapidly. The high levels of art have progressed so rapidly that, but if you're not in that world, you might not know. You might see something that has color in it that's a year old, and they'll be like, "Holy cow! How did the color stay?"
Yeah,
But
it baffles me. I guess I spend too much time looking at tattoos because when I see a bad tattoo, and I don't mean something I don't like, because like I don't love watercolor tattoos, but some people can do them really well, right? So it's not my taste. It's when I see things that are all chewed up and barely saturated and lines are falling apart, and I see people like, oh, look at that. I'm like, this is why these shops that just keep spitting out apprentices, this is why they keep going, because the layman doesn't get it.
Yeah. And I mean, I deal with a lot of people that are either first tattooers or first time tattoos, or they've had one and they don't really know why it didn't come out well, and like I get asked a lot of questions, and we are an information-based shop. I will overshare in terms of potential for information, like things that you might need to know before the tattoo and after, because I'm trying to take people from a level of zero knowledge to as much as what they're going to need to care for a tattoo. And I just wish more places would do that. I know it's not possible for some, like they're just trying to make money to make a living, and they don't want to say no, because saying no to somebody and then having them go to somewhere else, and that might cost you, your money or your living or however it is. I know that can seem scary to some people, but I think in the long run it would be better for, like, because it's going to happen. The industry's going to get that way. Information now is just easier to access, and it's better. So the layman will become more informed as the industry enables it. But right now they're pretty uninformed because they get a lot of same-day photo tattoos of something that's going to look terrible later. And they bring them in, and they're like, hey, I want this thing, and I want it this big. And it's like, I have to be the one to say, like, okay, you've been fed a lie. I'm sorry. But unless you're going to a guy that you're going to be paying him $5,000 to do that little tiny thing, you're going to end up with some blobs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to be the one to break it to you right now. And you could either respond well to that and take our information and make a good decision, or you could walk down the street and someone might say yes. And you're going to come to it later and be like, it didn't really turn out the way I wanted it to. Yeah.
You got what you wanted, and
I get that.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have wanted that either. And but like, I just think the more people that get on board with that mentality of like, just let's over-inform people. Let's make them informed. Let's not just do it because they say they want it. I know that like there's some things that we have to be responsible for. We have to be responsible for how that thing's going to look later. Mm-hmm. It just can't be about the day, and too much.
Yeah, that's what
This
we
is-
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we do in life in general.
And that's the thing. Like,
if I'm happy now, I don't care if I'm suffering later.
yes.
That-
But tattoo is not that.
No,
It's not something that we can do that with. We can't just have the instant gratification.
it's not like
lifestyle
when you
with it.
order a bucket of chicken and you eat it, and
You
you're
feel
laying
bad
on the
later.
couch with a sore stomach
Yeah.
after. You know, that instant regret is going to last
Yeah.
longer than a sore stomach.
It's gonna be on you for a long, long time. And
Yeah. So basically, I guess the main point is, you should shop around more than you would for a meal. When
Yeah.
you're getting a tattoo, you should make sure you're getting it done
Yeah.
by someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Someone who's willing to tell you
You're
no.
getting more than a sore stomach
Yeah.
from a bad meal.
Yeah. You need to embrace someone that's gonna tell you no.
Yeah.
Because, if you were right all the time, then you might be a tattooer instead.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a reason you're going to that person. Take that information. You know what
I
mean?
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.